So, one of the many things that we learned about early on with PS5 was Sony's commitment to finally cooling down this platform so that it's not as loud as something like PS4. And now that the console is finally here, we can test that out and compare it to various PS4 models, noise levels and heat included. We've also got our other next generation console that recently launched, Xbox Series X. And then for the actual noise testing, I don't have a decibel reader on hand, and I know that would have made it easier to look at some numbers and go, that's loud, that's not, but a lot of these are very similar, especially the next gen consoles. And so this might work out better to where you can listen and judge for yourself. And so what I've done is placed my DSLR in front of these consoles, maybe about a foot away. I just use the onboard microphone, which is very sensitive, so it picks up a lot of ambient white noise. I'm close to a local road that gets some decent traffic, so you might hear that. But for the most part, it's totally silent, just the console's operating, and you can try to listen in. Headphones will probably be more appropriate here to try and listen as best as you can, especially for PS5 and Series X. They don't make much noise, but there is something there which you'll pick up on when you listen to the test. But that's it. Sorry for the long intro, but had to get some of that out. Let's get started. So with our original PlayStation 4, you can no doubt hear the loud fan noise kicking in within a matter of minutes playing the opening sequence for God of War. There's nothing crazy happening within the first few moments of the game, and yet the console is being pushed very hard by this late generation title. There's not much more we need to see here, the fan will stay around this speed for most parts while playing this game. For heat, you can see the console is quite cool near the HDD bay cover, there's nothing going on over there, but towards the bottom section is where we do see temps rise a bit. Of course, what we want to see is where most of the heat actually escapes the console, and that's the rear vents. For PS4, the entire rear from left to right will let heat escape, and the closer you get to your AC in, you'll see a max temp of 55 degrees. A theme you'll notice here with noise, unsurprisingly, is all consoles will power on silently when there's nothing inside, but disc noise will be very audible once they're inserted. This goes away after the discs have done their job though, since most game data nowadays is copied from the disc to internal storage. The first PS4 Slim tends to use higher fan speeds quicker, and it may actually sound a bit louder due to the smaller size of the case. And because of that smaller case size, you'll see that heat can be trapped better. The top of the PS4 Slim towards the rear, but before the vents, can reach up to 50 degrees. When looking at the rear vents, you've got temps around the 50s up until you're near the power cable, and it can top off around 62. PS4 Pro often gets a bad rap, but it does a slightly better job versus base models. Fan speed is still present, but you can see noticeable fluctuations depending on what you're doing in game. Which, remember, God of War is our worst case scenario PS4 title. The base consoles will work very hard the entire time, but PS4 Pro tends to have a fighting chance at lowering fan speeds ever so slightly. With heat, you can see that towards the rear, the top of the console can reach the mid to high 40s, but around the back, you'll see a fairly consistent temp of 55 to 60 across that one main vent. With PS5, I think you'll find this actually can get pretty noisy when reading a disc. This isn't really a huge concern though. After a disc is read or after you've copied game data completely, that noise does go away. Which you'll then find PS5 handles God of War beautifully, especially under performance mode where you're hitting a nice 60 frames per second and the console is very quiet. Under the load of a PS4 game, you'll see some modest temps, staying near or under 40 Celsius on any of the warmer parts towards the front and sides of the console. On the rear, you can see the sheer size of the vents all showing some heat, though again, this is all staying around the mid-40s, sometimes less. Now, before we stress test an actual PS5 game, let's do our Series X test, where we'll run Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Any sort of disc reads on a Series X seem to be very prominent, but again, not much of an issue with modern consoles once the game is fully installed. From here on out though, Series X has some great results. The console stays very quiet. At worst, you can hear slight vibrations from the fan slowly whirring, but that's only when you've isolated the noise like I have here. The concave top of the Series X is where you'll find most of your heat, which sits comfortably around the high 40s to 50s. The rear, where we normally find most of our heat escaping on consoles, is less pronounced. Mid-40s is usually what we're looking at. Could be lower towards the bottom, or higher towards one little pocket up top. Finally, we can see the PS5 put through its paces with Demon's Souls, using the mode favoring frame rate. This is an interesting one because depending on your sensitivity to sound, you may not have even heard this, but with headphones and turning up the volume, you'll notice a slight buzzing noise. Not an actual fan noise, just a slight buzzing. So for those curious, this is very likely coil whine. PC gamers will be familiar with this. This is where certain graphics cards and power supplies can create this phenomenon. And it happens with any electronic component that draws power, and depending on that power, that physical part might vibrate enough to where it's actually audible. Now, this isn't normally considered a defect. In fact, oftentimes PC part manufacturers won't even accept returns due to coil whine because this doesn't affect operation at all. You can actually tell it's coil whine because it gets a bit louder under more intensive games or higher frame rates. In my testing, it was actually there for God of War, but it was ever so slight. On Demon's Souls, you can hear the frequency of it adjust automatically when switching between performance or cinematic mode. It even disappears automatically when going right to the home screen. Here's some exaggerated footage just so you can hear it more clearly. So for PS5, it's actually quite interesting to spot it here because coil whine has happened on consoles before. Some PS4 Pros would have this issue, but the thing is, fan noise alone easily drowns this out. On PS5, though, we know Sony took cooling very seriously, so now, with fan speeds at a minimum, coil whine can show. But in the context of a console, this really isn't much of an issue. Game audio alone makes this disappear, much less the fact that your PS5 might be far away from your seating position. And since the noise varies depending on what's on screen, this might be something that most people will never even notice. It can even sometimes resolve itself too. Not often, but sometimes that can happen. Having said all this, coil whine would be enough for Series X to take the crown of silence, but considering the variables and the excellent results from both, we're probably just splitting hairs at this point. Anyway, for heat while running Demon's Souls, the PS5 will definitely get warmer. All around, whether it's from the front or the rear, the console is seeing on average a 5-degree increase. The highest I could visibly see was near the HDMI port, where it peaked around 54. Now, for fun, let's take a look at this modified 60-gig PS3. Now that we're back to the PS3, you're seeing disk operation happening periodically, and that can get very noisy. But this PS3 did pretty well when it comes to fat models. So what makes this one so special? Well, it was retrofitted with a 19-blade fan versus the standard 15-blade one. It has an updated power supply, new thermal paste on top of and underneath the IHS plates, but also on the very bottom of the console, holes were drilled out where the fan is, allowing more heat to escape, or really just having more air circulation in general. These original models, which are my absolute favorite, can run hot and get very noisy, so with this one, I think it did quite well playing God of War 3. It's not a dramatic improvement, but it can go a long way for getting more healthy years out of the system. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe for more PlayStation 5 coverage. We have a lot coming. Probably daily uploads. We might miss a day or two here and there, but for the most part, we've got more testing and evaluating videos like this coming up for the new console. And that's it. I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.